At the start of these asshole Olympics, most of the media has this guy pegged to stand on the podium and collect the gold. That demonstrates that the media is out of touch with most of America right now because we're holding up this guy, FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, as the front-runner for the gold in the asshole Olympics because of his plans to gut net neutrality. Net neutrality is the principle that all data transmitted over the internet is treated equally. There can be no discrimination or favoritism towards beta based on the source of that data. Simply put, the internet is like a highway. Paying your internet bill is like paying your registration and insurance and putting gas in your car. It's a basic usage cost that allows you to get on the road. What net neutrality does is ensure that you don't have to stop and pay extra tolls every time you want to go to a site like Netflix or PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live, Facebook, Amazon, etc. while you're on that road because you've already paid your tolls to use whatever additional services you're using. You don't have to stop because you've already got your FastPass. Sounds reasonable, right? Ones and zeros are ones and zeros. Except when they're not. Verizon and T-Mobile have both been caught throttling Netflix.
Now, I was able to test this on T-Mobile and Verizon and got throttled on both of them, but that was only through Netflix, YouTube, and potentially other services as well. So let's begin with the first test, and I'm going to test Verizon first, and I'm able to test it using Netflix and YouTube as well. So first of all, I want to run a generic speed test on their LTE network. I just go through google.com, their speed test. So you'll see I'm getting about 44 plus megabits per second download speed, so very, very good download speeds. I do live in Chicago. I generally get very good LTE data speeds on all carriers, essentially. So you'll see here, very good data speeds. I don't need to run through the upload test. But now what I'm going to do is run a test on the website fast.com, which is run through Netflix servers, so very similar to as if you were watching a video on Netflix. And what I think happens is the mobile carrier recognizes that it's going through Netflix servers, and you'll see I'm only getting 11 megabits per second download speed. And they do throttle it generally around 10, and that is consistent. This video is actually spurred from a Reddit thread. I will link to it down below. And people are reporting very similar results. I hope you drop a comment, let me know what your results are. But like I said, this is throttled at 10 megabits per second, fast.com through Netflix servers. Now, I want to go ahead and jump into YouTube. So first of all, what I want to do is jump into settings and show you how to activate this. So go to settings, general, make sure you don't limit mobile data usage, that is a key, and then make sure you check enable stats for nerd. And then I want to go ahead and search for a video. So let's go ahead and load up a video real quick. Of course, this is my video. Anyways, so here's a video. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch the quality. You'll see it's already set to 1080p, and it's running through. It looks like it's a little jittery. There it goes. Take some time to buffer and load up that video. But now, you'll see it's taking some time. Let's go into settings real quick and stats for nerds. And those pop up. And check out the bandwidth. You'll see it is only at 3.45 megabits per second. That should be much higher than that. I think it's recognizing where the data is coming from and throttling it, specifically throttling the speeds as well. And this is fine maybe if you have a limited data plan, but if you have an unlimited data plan, this makes no sense. You want to utilize the max speeds as much as possible. Now let's go ahead and run the exact same tests on a phone on T-Mobile's network. So again, this is a generic internet speed test from google.com. Looks like it's stalling a bit. It should go ahead and run through and finish with a final number. But again, 59, so almost 60 megabits per second download speeds, and you'll see upload speeds are fantastic as well. So T-Mobile's network looking good. Now let's do the exact same thing. Let's go to fast.com through Netflix servers again, and you'll see it starts out really high. You see 19, and then it keeps dropping down. Why is it doing that? It shouldn't do that. And like I said, I think T-Mobile sees, oh, Netflix servers, let's go ahead and start throttling this data, and you'll see it goes all the way down to about 3 megabits per second. That's generally what the average speed I have been getting throttled on T-Mobile, and you'll see it's even going sub 3 megabits per second. So pretty unacceptable. Again, let's go ahead and jump into YouTube. Okay, so loaded up a video, just switched it to 1080p quality, going to try and scroll through, and you'll see it is taking a good amount of time to load. And let's go to those stats, and let's take a look at what that bandwidth says. So it takes a little bit of time to load up. And there we go. Now that it's loaded, take a look. 1.47 megabits per second.
And I've caught my own ISP throttling Netflix as well. Now, I realize that at the speeds I pay for, 120 megabit per second drop due to throttling isn't even an issue and has no impact at all on my viewing experience. It's a first world problem. Except with HBO Go, where the buffering during Game of Thrones makes me have appreciation for Cersei's batshit crazy villainy or wish Khaleesi wasn't a fictional character with her 3 dragons. But if I were only paying for the lowest tier my ISP offers, which is about 25 megs for $20 a month, that throttling would definitely impact my experience on nearly all of my entertainment, and not just Thrones and American Gods on Stars. Throttling by 1/3 at high speeds and 2/3 at low speeds, at just because you can, is a problem, and it's not one that's limited to just one ISP. As comedian John Oliver says, it's nothing less than ISP fuckery. Included in that fuckery is the number of mergers going on within the industry. AT&T's purchase of DirecTV and Time Warner Communications, Charter Spectrum's purchase of Time Warner Cable, Comcast's purchase of AT&T's broadband assets, and its acquiring of Adelphia's consumer bases in 6 different states. These companies, as you can see, own and control a sizable portion of communications and entertainment and its distribution in this country. In fact, the problem is so big, including the fact that in many areas of the country there is only one provider, that the United States Democratic Party has made addressing telecom monopolies part of its platform in an attempt to regain some traction with voters after rigging not only their party's 2016 U.S. presidential nomination process, but their own internal leadership elections process. Now, this is a hot-button issue again right now because FCC Chairman Ajit Pai and the telecoms such as AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, Cox, Charter, they want to do away with the 2015 Obama administration regulations that helped preserve net neutrality. Now, admittedly, the regulations that we have right now aren't the best, but they are all we have to protect consumers from these major telecom conglomerates. Doing away with net neutrality and just trusting the major telecom monopolies, like Pai suggests, to maintain net neutrality with absolutely no oversight from anyone has the potential to create internet fast lanes and slow lanes for content based on ISP preference and additional charges to consumers. Companies like Netflix have already been forced by ISPs to pay extra in order to continue carrying their content consumers, despite the fact that we've demonstrated that ISPs continue to throttle Netflix based on the fact that the ISPs say that it taxes their infrastructure. Well, why is this a problem? First, the costs are getting passed on to consumers in the name of building infrastructure, despite the fact that telecoms are making huge profits on the internet services that they provide, even with this quote-unquote additional strain on their infrastructure. Second, Chairman Pai says that Title II regulation is government overreach, and there are some, including President Trump, who agree with him. But let's look at Title II in the 1996 Communications Act, which amends Title II, and let's see if that's true. First of all, we have to remember that Title II governs common carriers, telephony and such, which all of these providers are already subject to because they are common carriers. Every single one of these providers also offers phone and cell phone coverage. We also need to remember that the FCC has the option to forbear entire sections of Title II where that's appropriate. What that means is that the FCC has the option to only enforce the sections of Title II that directly apply to internet services, rather than applying all of Title II directly to ISPs when some of those regulations may not apply. So let's take a look at the 1996 Communications Act and see what it says. First, it says here, Public Law 104-104 in the 104th Congress, except as otherwise expressly provided whenever in this act an amendment or repeal is expressed in terms of an amendment to or repeal of a section or other provision, the reference shall be considered to be made a section or other provision of the Communications Act of 1934, which is Title II. So now we go to the part of this that directly applies, which is Section 706. It's 2 paragraphs. The communication in each state commission with regulatory jurisdiction over telecommunications services shall encourage the deployment on a reasonable and timely basis of advanced telecommunications capability to all Americans, including in particular elementary and secondary schools and classrooms, by utilizing in a manner consistent with public interest, convenience, and necessity, price cap regulation regulatory forbearance, measures that promote competition in the local telecommunications market, or other regulating methods that remove barriers to infrastructure investment. And it goes on to define advanced telecommunications capability as high-speed switched broadband telecommunications capability that enables users to initiate and receive high-quality voice, data, graphics, and video telecommunications using any technology. That is why the Telecommunications Act of 1996 is pertinent, and some are trying to say that that is the only law that applies here. So let's take a look at Title II. And Title II is long, but there's only a few sections that actually apply. It regulates what actually happens with telecommunications. It shall be unlawful for any common carrier to make any unjust or unreasonable discrimination in charges, practices, classifications, regulations, facilities, or services for in connection with like communication service directly or indirectly by any means or device, or to make or give any undue or unreasonable preference or advantage to any particular person, class of persons, or locality, or subject any particular person, class of persons, or locality to any undue or unreasonable prejudice or disadvantages. Charges or services when referred to in this act include charges for or services in connection with the use of common carrier lines of communication, and it levies fines for anybody who does not adhere to this. Section 208 of Title II says that any person, body politic, or municipal organization or state commission can make a complaint directly to the FCC if any company violates this. Section 222 goes into the privacy information, and it says that every telecommunications carrier has a duty to protect the confidentiality of relating to other carriers, equipment manufacturers, and customers, that they cannot use that information for anything other than its own marketing efforts, and they cannot sell or give that information to any other network or associated individual, except upon affirmative written request by the customer. In other words, you have to opt in. There aren't very many parts of Title II that actually apply here, and the FCC actually has the discretion to say this is the only parts that apply, and these are what we're going to use to regulate. And we can see very clearly, because of the 1996 Communications Act update that was written by Congress specifically to update the 1934 Act, that Title II was upgraded to apply to internet providers. Title II is very clear about this, and so is the 1996 Communications Act. Data is to be treated equally, fees and costs are to be reasonable, and if that doesn't happen, the FCC and or Congress are tasked with stepping in to protect consumers. What's being said here is that you can't charge Bill Gates more for his phone bill or his internet because he's rich, and you can't charge Netflix more to transmit their data because they use more of it and because they make a lot of money by transmitting data. We've seen companies, though, get charged to prioritize their data or even allow their data to be transmitted, as Netflix has. We've seen companies have their data and their sites blocked entirely. Companies known for file sharing have been blocked entirely by some ISPs for periods of time. And while the problem with that is that, yes, illegal activity does happen on file sharing sites and even on WikiLeaks, but so does perfectly legal activity.
My record label all around the world hates me because I yelled at them and called them out for being greedy fucking assholes. Has the price come down at all? Has anyone seen the price come down? Okay. Well, you know what that means. Steal it. Steal away. Steal and steal and steal some more and give it to all your friends and keep on stealing. Because one way or another, these motherfuckers are getting it through their head that they're ripping people off, and that's not right. Probably didn't make any friends by saying that. All right, here we go.
Prior to the days of Dropbox and other legitimate file sharing sites, large files that were being collaborated on had to be shared via P2P sites. And sharing was perfectly legal when it's somebody who's transmitting their own copyright data to someone else, or say an indie filmmaker or an indie musician who's releasing their own music. But that didn't stop ISPs from blocking access to those sites. We have seen censorship of sites like WikiLeaks based on companies and the government's disagreements with what WikiLeaks is and does. And if we allow net neutrality to be gutted in this manner by the government and the cable companies, how long is it going to be before other sites that the government disagrees with or that companies disagree with are throttled or blocked? Just like the president, block whitehouse.gov. Just like Anita Sarkeesian or Brianna Wu, who is running for office, block their sites. Block Feminist Frequency, block Brianna Wu's political site. Just like Cassie J, block access to any site that mentions her or allows viewing of the red pill. Just like Black Lives Matter, Westboro, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, the atheists, block access to the sites that mention these groups or slow them down to the point that they are effectively blocked for most users. Whether we like it or not, ISPs are the stewards of free expression in modern society where everything is interconnected, and net neutrality is an issue of access to freedom of expression and access to freedom of ideas. This is an idea that the ISPs themselves have argued, complaining that they should have editorial control over the content that they provide access to, and that to deny them this is to deny them their First Amendment rights. This is an argument that they lost after acknowledging that they don't look at the content, but we know that they do look at the content because we know that they have blocked peer-to-peer sites. To give any company the power to throttle or speed up or block a site that can't or won't pay the fee, or a customer that can't or won't pay the fee to a fast lane, is to limit access to ideas. To give a company the power to block access to ideas that someone else has deemed dangerous is to limit thought and speech to only what a company or a government deems acceptable. How are we any different from totalitarian regimes that do suppress human rights if we allow the same thing in this country here? How can we seriously hold ourselves up as protectors of liberty and human rights if we don't give a damn about either and just allow he who has the gold to make the rules? Chairman Pai's version of net neutrality seems to be trust me and trust major corporations and conglomerates. And I don't trust a guy whose previous occupation was as a lawyer for Verizon, one of the very companies that is fighting so hard against net neutrality. The point here is that utilizing money to determine who has access to ideas and content is a form of censorship. It's a softer, kinder, gentler form of censorship, but it is still censorship to anyone who lacks the finances. Now, I'm a firm believer that government is not the solution to our problems. It's not the solution to many problems or any problems. But I also believe strongly in the free market. And I understand that we've never truly had a free market in the United States. There are times when light touch regulation is needed. Our government exists by our consent, and it exists for exactly this purpose, to enact the will of the people, not mega conglomerates. And the will of the people here is clear. We, the people, demand a free and open internet where data is treated equally without discrimination or preference. The people want net neutrality, and we want Verizon lawyer Ajit Pai and his ridiculously oversized mug of corporate interests out of the FCC. The will of the overwhelming majority of the people is that the free and open exchange of ideas with no preference shown or blocking towards ideas on the internet is what we want. So what can you do? Well, you can call or email your Congress critter by going to battlefortheinternet.com and use the form there to contact your congressional representatives. You can follow and donate to organizations like EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that actively work to ensure that our rights in the digital space are not violated. You can share this video and the videos of others on net neutrality all over YouTube. You can share the links provided in the description to this video to the organizations like battleforthenet.com and EFF, and encourage people to get involved, because we don't lose our freedoms to people half a world away who are trying to take them from us. We lose them to our own apathy and our refusal to take action.